What is going on, everybody? So I am back today to do the last installment in a short series of videos that I've been doing, which is talking about, in my opinion, the most underrated films of the decade so far, because a lot of people have been talking about their favorite movies of the decade and what have hit the top of their list. But there are a lot of movies from this decade right now that have been released that didn't get critical buzz, that didn't have a lot of people discussing them. And I always think it's important to bring those movies up because you can often discover a new favorite when you look outside of the box of the things that are the most discussed. And the year we're going to be talking about today, 2022, was a phenomenal year for movies. There were so many amazing films that I watched in 2022. So I have quite a few underrated films from this year that I think is 100% worth you checking out. So let's get into it right now. So first up is going to be the film Resurrection, starring Rebecca Hall. This movie was released on Shudder. It didn't get a theatrical release, or if it did, it was a very minimal theatrical release. And I remember reading a lot of early buzz for this movie and being very excited about it. And I really loved this movie a lot. And I think what makes this movie so great is Rebecca Hall's performance. But paralleled with that is the incredible sense of tension and unease that the movie creates just from the very beginning. The movie is about Rebecca Hall and her young daughter moving to the city together. They're living together. This man played by Tim Roth shows up and starts following her around, and we're not 100% sure as to what his intentions are early on. And as the movie progresses, we learn a little bit more about him, what his relationship to Rebecca Hall's character was previously, and it is just such a suspenseful, psychological, uncomfortable movie that is just so well made. And I'm surprised more people didn't talk about this one. I feel like there are a lot of similarities that I could compare this to Andrei Zulawski's Possession, just in the way that it's structured, and especially the third act blow up in this movie. It hits a lot of really great beats, and I absolutely adored this movie when I watched it the first time. I just felt like it contained everything that I love in this type of a movie, and it's really a slept on gem. And if you haven't got the chance to watch Resurrection yet, I'd 100% recommend it. It is a great movie. Up next is going to be the John Patton Ford film Emily the Criminal, starring Aubrey Plaza. This movie got put on Netflix not too long ago, I believe, and it had a little bit of a resurgence where more people got a chance to check it out. But when this was released in 2022, I heard virtually nothing about it. I didn't hear very many reviews. I didn't hear a lot of people discussing it. And this movie was really impressive. I really loved Aubrey Plaza's performance in this movie. Whenever Aubrey takes on a dramatic role, she shows her versatility as an actress and just how talented that she is. This is a movie about a woman who needs to find quick ways to make money fast. She gets involved with this group that does these schemes with things like returning items to different stores that are stolen, all of these things that start off feeling like a little by little thing, and as she continues with the organization, the threat to her safety grows and grows and grows. And I just felt like the way they built that suspense and that tension was really well executed. And obviously, as I said, Aubrey Plaza gives a fantastic performance in this. Theo Rossi, who a lot of people know from Sons of Anarchy, was in this movie. He gave a phenomenal performance as well. And I just thought this was a really well-paced, well-structured thriller that I'm glad it got a resurgence on Netflix, but I think more people definitely need to check it out. Up next is going to be the film Hellbender from the Addams Family. I actually got the opportunity to interview Toby Poser and John Adams, the two of the directors of this film. They're a family that makes movies together, Toby and John, and then their two daughters, Zelda and Lulu. And I remember seeing this film on Shudder and being completely obsessed with it and watching it right after I watched it the very first time. This is a very simple story of a mother and a daughter living at a house in the middle of nowhere. The daughter has been told by the mother that she has these health conditions, and so she's not able to go to regular school or live out in the world as a normal kid. They make this really amazing music together, and we find out through a certain set of circumstances that the family is involved in witchcraft. They are witches, but not necessarily witches in the traditional sense. And this movie has some really great visual imagery. It's really unique in its structure. The performances are all really great. But what I love about this is it uses horror as a backdrop to a familial drama. And I think that there's a lot that you can pull out of watching this movie, especially in the relationship between mother and daughter in this film. And because this is a family affair and this is a family making these movies together, you can just feel the realness and the raw emotion in every single scene. I really love the Addams Family's movies. I feel like they do such a great job with their films. The fact that they do a lot of it on their own and they're so passionate about it, they're always a blast to watch. They have a new film coming out very soon that I'm really looking forward to checking out. But if you haven't got the chance to watch Hellbender, I would 100% recommend it. It's really fun, it's violent, it's surreal, it's strange. It's just such a unique viewing experience that I would recommend to everyone. Up next is going to be the film Pleasure. This is a movie that I was really excited about when it first got announced, and I went into this one relatively blind, knowing a little bit of the base premise, and I was really blown away by this movie. This is a very authentic and realistic look into the porn industry and to sex work in general. And what I liked about this movie is that it shows all sides of the sex work industry. I feel like a lot of movies that focus on the sex work industry, especially when it comes to porn in general, there's often a very negative light shown on that industry. And there are a lot of things wrong with that industry, but I think when you're going to make a movie about it, you have to display the good and the bad. And I think the way that this is approached really does kind of give you the really evil people that get involved in the industry and also the positive side of the industry. There's a scene in this movie that our lead actress goes to do a scene that is shot by a female director, and there's a lot more about like consent, making sure she's okay, constantly checking on her, all those things, where there's a scene that she goes with these three men that are directing this scene that it is very different. It's a lot less about comfort, it's much more about manipulating her to get what they want so that they can make their money. And I thought that it was really interesting to show those power dynamics and the different types of set structures in that industry. And I really think that this is a slept on gem, and that the movie is really saying something important, and more people definitely need to watch this one. Up next is an A24 film I feel like not a lot of people discussed, and that is the film Causeway, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Brian Tyree Henry. And even though Brian Tyree Henry did earn an Oscar nomination for his performance in this movie, it really was not talked about all that much. I feel like even in the A24 community, this thing got dumped on Apple TV Plus's streaming service, and it is such a fantastic movie. It's a very simple premise. Jennifer Lawrence served in the military, and she got in an accident. Something happened to where she could no longer serve. She has to come back home to get reacclimated into society, and after she goes through some therapy, she gets a job cleaning pools, and her vehicle breaks down. She takes to this auto shop that is ran by Brian Tyree Henry, and the two of them form this unlikely friendship. And what's really interesting is the two of them come from very different backgrounds and have both been through very different trauma, but because of the trauma that the two of them have experienced together, they share in this really beautiful friendship in trying to overcome that trauma that they have experienced together. And I think it's a really beautiful movie that no matter who you are, you can see something in this movie, pull something away from it that I think will really impact you on a very deep level. I loved this movie a lot, and I'm really looking forward to revisiting it sometime soon. Up next, if you've watched my YouTube or my TikTok videos, I rave about this movie consistently, and that is the film The Quiet Girl. This movie was nominated for Best International Film at the Academy Awards, and it is on Hulu now, I believe, and is getting a little bit more traction, and I am so happy for that because it is one of the best films I have ever seen, period. One of my favorite movies of all time. I've watched this, I believe, 3 or 4 times since it's been released, and what is so beautiful about this movie is how quiet and nuanced it is compared to a lot of Hollywood films. Very simple story about a young girl in Ireland who lives with her family. Her mother gets pregnant. Her dad is very not in the picture. He comes home, but like you can tell, he's not a great father. He's not really concerned with how his children are doing. They have a lot of kids, so the mother is busy with everyone. She is kind of just pushed off to the side, and because she is pregnant and about to have another kid, she doesn't feel like she's able to take care of her in the way that she needs to be cared for, and so they send her off with distant family. It's a husband and wife couple. They bring her in, immediately start taking care of her, and it is just such a beautiful film about empathy and compassion towards human beings. And it is displayed not through heavy expositional dialogue, but through very simple gestures like a touch or a glance, or just like the most simple sign of love that you can show for another human being. And this movie really genuinely moved me me in a way that not a lot of movies do. And I recommend this movie to virtually everyone I talk to because I think it is so beautiful and so poignant. If you're going to watch a movie on this list, I would highly recommend checking out The Quiet Girl. It is absolutely incredible. Another film from a predominant director that I feel like was really slept on was the film Vortex from director Gaspar Noé. Gaspar Noé obviously is an incredibly prolific, surreal, abstract filmmaker that creates these very unique movies that oftentimes are not structured narratively in a traditional sense. And the first movie I saw from Gaspar Noé was the film Climax. I was not a huge fan of that movie. I loved it cinematographically. I thought the visual presentation was incredible. But as far as substantively, I didn't pull a whole lot from it. So when this movie was announced, I wasn't like 100% ready to jump on board because I wasn't a huge fan of that. And I'm glad that I did because this movie is incredible. It's moving. It's just in the same vein as The Quiet Girl in a little bit of a different sense. We're introduced to a husband and wife couple, the husband played by Dario Argento, which is what got me very excited to see this movie. And the wife is falling ill with dementia, and she is struggling with dementia. And the film is shot in a split screen style to where we see the perspectives of the husband and the wife at the same time and what their days are like and when they leave the room together and what they're both dealing with. And I think that this movie looks at something like dementia in a way that is so realistic and grounded in just the horrors of what it's like to suffer this awful disease where you can't remember the person who you love the most. And I think Gaspar Noé has been known for creating really heavy-hitting, emotional movies about very disturbing subject matter. And this looks at something that is so realistic and so painful that so many people have to go through. And it's done in a way that I just think is absolutely brilliant. And if you get a chance to check this movie out, I'd highly recommend it. So last up on my list, and this one I guess you could argue whether it's underrated. I think it's underrated because it didn't get any Oscar nominations. I didn't hear it talked about a whole lot, but that is Park Chan-wook's newest film, Decision to Leave. This immediately became one of my favorite films of all time. As soon as I watched it, it has everything you could possibly want in a movie. It is about a detective who is investigating a case of this political figure that has been murdered, and they're investigating his wife, and the detective and the wife start to form a relationship together. This has every hallmark you want from a Park Chan-wook movie. It gets psychologically insane to the point where you're just like, what is going to happen next? Every twist and turn that occurs is just so fantastic. Cinematography is absolutely brilliant. South Korean cinema is just on a whole nother level, and Park Chan-wook is one of the best to ever do it, and this movie proves just how incredible of a director that Park Chan-wook is. I would recommend this movie to any and everyone, especially if you're a film lover, and it's just one of the best movies that came out that year. So what are some films from 2022 that you think are underrated? Let me know in the comments. These are just some of the movies that I felt like weren't highlighted enough that I feel like more people need to watch, and I loved these movies a lot, but I definitely want to hear some of the ones that you loved as well. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.